I apologize for the wonderful background sound right now. It is raining and it is progressively getting worse and worse. So, you know, not the best time to film, but it's like the only time for me to film this video, so I apologize. But hi, I'm Katrina, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read and reviewed in the month of July. Yes, I did another review this month, but in July I had a really good reading month. I read 11 books. This is probably the most I've read in a month this year, I think, and I'm so happy about it. There were 2 readathons I participated in July, the summer biannual bibliothon and the booktubeathon. I'm so thankful that these 2 readathons came into my life at this time, because uni break, I had so much more free time. I could actually read books that I wanted to read. And thankfully this excitement in my freedom to read was highlighted by the fact that I read a lot of really good books this month as well. Enough rambling, let's talk about the books. The first book that I'm going to talk about today is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. So this book is set during a single day, and we kind of get glimpses into the lives of a series of characters but are all linked in some way to Mrs. Dalloway, who is hosting a party. Now, I'm not giving this one a rating at this point, and I have a couple of reasons for that. I decided to pick this book up during one of the readathons this month, and I don't think that was the smartest decision for me. Despite being a really short book, this isn't fast-paced in any means, and it's a really character-driven book, so I think that my timing of reading this one was kind of off. Now, I didn't dislike this book, but I didn't love it either. I felt fairly neutral about it, so I don't really want to give this one a proper rating because I feel like my feelings are going to change on this one when it comes around to actually discussing this in class and studying the book. But I wish I'd just taken my time with this book and savored it and really appreciated the book for what it is. If you are interested in knowing my final thoughts on the book and my final rating, then follow me on Goodreads or Twitter. My Goodreads is linked to my Twitter. I also listened to a couple of audiobooks. The first one that I finished was Liar by Justine Labalestiere. This is a book that I gave 3 out of 5 stars. So Liar follows Micah, who is a compulsive liar. She lies to absolutely everybody, pretty much about everything. And at the beginning of this book, Micah finds out that the guy she's been seeing has shown up dead. He was missing for a couple of days, and then they find his body. So that's all I'm going to say about this book in terms of the synopsis, and I'm going to keep my thoughts on this one quite brief because a lot of my thoughts on this book kind of dabble into spoiler territory, so I'm going to be as brief and vague as possible because I went into this book knowing practically nothing, and I do think that's probably the best way to go into reading this book, knowing as little as possible, because it's a bit of a psychological thriller, a lot of mystery going on. So from the get-go, the title, the synopsis suggests that Micah is a very unreliable narrator. She lies about everything, so from the beginning of the book you're wondering if what she's telling you is truth or not. Whilst Micah is a really interesting character, to me she wasn't very likable. So at times it was hard for me to kind of sympathize with her because I wasn't very drawn to her personality, but she's definitely an interesting and fascinating main character. There were also a few elements of this book that I weren't a huge fan of, but these all come down to personal preference. So for the next person, they may love those elements in a book and probably would have enjoyed it a lot more than I did. So whilst there were a few elements that I didn't love, they didn't take away from my appreciation of the book in any way. I feel the need to stress this because even though there were things that I didn't particularly love and that factored a little bit into my rating of the book, I still thought it was a good book, and I really liked the fact that it did have an unreliable narrator. I feel like my thoughts on this book are a little all over the place, so I hope that made some sort of sense. These next 2 books I rated 4 stars, the first of which is The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. This is the first Morgan Matson book that I've read, and I really enjoyed it. This was such a fun and enjoyable read. In this book we follow Andy, whose father is a politician, and due to a scandal in his career, Andy finds her summer plans tossed into the wind. So at the beginning of summer she's flailing a little bit but manages to find a summer job as a dog walker, and through this she meets a lovely boy named Clark, who is this slightly quiet and shy guy, and I kind of like Clark. I quite like him. So we follow Andy as this new romance blossoms and her adventures with her friends, as well as some dramas. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. This is the first contemporary that I've read in a really long time, I think. So I found it really refreshing that the main character's close friends and her father were so present in the story, and in fact actually played such a large role in the plot. That's one thing that really irritates me in quite a lot of young adult books, is that the parents and the friends just kind of seem to fade away, especially after romantic interest is introduced. They just don't seem to be that relevant anymore. But that wasn't the fact in this one, and I found that really nice. One thing is that some of the scenes in this one were super cheesy. Whilst I was like, oh, this is so cute, I was like, I would be cringing if I were witnessing this in real life. I'd be like, oh, look away. Really enjoyed this one. So glad that I picked this one up. And the fact that I really enjoyed this as well is definitely motivation to pick up more of Morgan Matson's books. And the other book that I gave 4 out of 5 stars is More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. In the world of More Happy Than Not, there is this procedure that exists that can take away your memories. And Aaron is extremely opposed to the procedure. He doesn't like it. He would never do it. But then this boy shows up and Aaron starts feeling quite conflicted because he has a girlfriend but is starting to develop feelings for this new guy named Thomas. This book, it kind of broke me a little bit, I'll admit that. And I think the reason why I had such a strong reaction to this book is because there was a really sudden shift in pacing. So the beginning of the book is quite slow, which I didn't really mind too much. I was enjoying it, but at the same time, there wasn't a huge amount happening. And then all of a sudden, we just kind of changed gears. I don't think I could really handle it. I don't think I was prepared for it. I was just really pleasantly surprised by this book. I went into it with no expectations. I had no idea what to expect in terms of the plot because I kind of had read over the synopsis prior to picking it up, but it had been a while between actually receiving this book and picking it up. This is a book that I received in an Owl Crate box, by the way. I just fell in love with Aaron and I fell in love even more so with Thomas. I really would recommend this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This next book that I have to talk about, I don't even know how to talk about it, and that is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I finally got around to finishing this one. So at the core of this, there is a film called The Navidson Record, and it's kind of like a home film put together with footage from video cameras kind of put around the house and handheld cameras about the Navidson family who moves into this house, and they discover a door on an outside wall of the house that realistically should lead into the backyard, but instead has a hallway inside, and in there, a labyrinth of sorts that is constantly moving and changing. And there's just creepy sounds, and it's just pitch black, and it's just so impossible, but it's just so real. And then the next layer of the story, which is essentially the main chunk of this, is an essay written by a man named Zampano who has seen the film and is writing about it. So through his essay, we discover what actually happens in the movie because you can't see it. Words on a page, you can't actually watch a movie this way yet. And then the third and final layer of House of Leaves are the footnotes and introduction written by a man named Johnny Truant, who stumbles across Zampano's essay, and he reads the essay, and then it's kind of about his reaction to it and the things that are happening in his life. This book also plays around with form, with words on the page. You get some pages with a single word, and then others with lots and lots. So we have 3 layers to this book. It's quite complex in that respect, but I think it was done very well. I don't know how to describe my feelings about this book. This was such a unique and different reading experience. The fact that I had nightmares thanks to this demonstrates how it gets in your head and stays there. Like, this is definitely a book that I can imagine myself thinking about time and time again, though I don't know if I would reread it. I think it's kind of a masterpiece. It was just done so well. The fact that I could really vividly imagine what was happening in the Navidson Record in the film based on what Zampano is telling us in an essay really speaks volumes for how well this was written. This is not an easy book to talk about. I do want to do a review of this one, so I might save more of my thoughts about it until then, after I've had the chance to kind of collect my thoughts fully. What I will say though is the main reason why I didn't really give it 5 out of 5 stars, it's like a really tiny thing, but it kind of hindered my enjoyment of this book, is that during the essay there were a couple of times where it went on really long tangents about things that didn't really have much to do with the Navidson Record or the house or anything like that. But at the end of the tangent, it is brought back to how this is related to the film or the house. But sometimes it seemed quite abstract, the links that were being made, so I just felt like I could have totally skipped over those sections because they were quite long and dry and things that I didn't actually comprehend, so I didn't know what I was reading. There was just some sections that I felt like I could have skipped over and it wouldn't have caused me any problems in my overall understanding of the book. Yeah, that's all I have to say at this point, but I know that you guys really want to see a full review of this one, so I'll get around to doing it at some point. I think I just need some time to think more on this and actually get my thoughts together. And lastly, we have a bunch of books that I rated 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I had a really good reading month. So first of all, I have volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of Full Metal Alchemist by Hiromi Arakawa. So obviously I have the 3-in-1 volumes of this manga series. This is such a fun series. I'm thoroughly enjoying these. So basically it follows the Elric brothers. We have Ed, who has lost an arm and a leg, and those limbs have been replaced with mechanical limbs. And then Alphonse, his younger brother, is a full suit of armor, just a walking suit of armor, and they are alchemists. So this one is Ed, and he is a state alchemist, so he's like working for the government. And they are in search of the Philosopher's Stone, which immediately made me think of Harry Potter. But obviously I'm really enjoying this series so far. I really like the art style. I love how detailed it is, and particularly in the action scenes, how they play up the drama and the suspense. Not only is the actual story just action-packed, really fast-paced, we have a lot of really fascinating characters. Edward and Alphonse come across some really interesting enemies, but we also have a lot of really hilarious and adorable and lovable side characters as well. I love the humor in these books as well, not just in the actual dialogue and the story, but in the art style as well. Some of the panels that are scattered throughout are just so hilarious. There is a bit of contrast between the drawing styles of like the actual characters in some of these humorous panels. They just really stand out to me, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. I've laughed several times while reading these. I would definitely recommend this manga series. I also read the final book in the Song of the Lioness quartet, Lioness Rampant by Tamora Pierce. I've been talking a fair bit about this series on my channel recently. It is one of my absolute favorite series from my childhood, and it was wonderful diving back into this world. Rereading these at an older age, I still really enjoyed them. I love Alana as a character. She's just such a strong and powerful and independent and courageous woman. The first book, Alana the First Adventure, follows her as she pretends to be her twin brother and trains to become a knight. So during this series, we follow her and her adventures, and this last book was just no disappointment. Now, even though I had read these books before, the 3rd and 4th books, I'd completely forgotten what happens in them since reading them like 10 years ago. So even though I technically reread this book, it felt like I was reading it for the first time. So all of the emotions were extremely raw. The second audiobook that I listened to in the month of July was The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. Now, if you know me at all, you'll know that this is like my favorite book of all time. And one of the challenges for the booktubeathon was to read a book by your favorite author, so I thought, why not pick up like my favorite book, but reread it in a different format this time. So I listened to the audiobook of it, and I would definitely recommend the audiobook. The narrator did an incredible job. The Book Thief is about a girl named Liesel living in Germany during the Second World War. So not only are they, you know, living in Nazi Germany, but her foster parents, Rosa and Hans Huberman, take in and hide a Jew. The really interesting thing about this book, in my opinion, is that it's narrated by death. And I think that the writing style is so beautiful and so lyrical. I really think that Marcus Zuzak did a great job of capturing the narrative voice of the character Death. Also, my book is signed. Oh my gosh, The first couple of sentences of this book are, first the colors, then the humans. That's how I usually see things, or at least how I try. Here is a small fact: you are going to die. The writing, A++. The characters, A++. I fell in love with them all over again, and the actual narration of the audiobook for this one was done extremely well. Again, A++. I did do a review of this book a couple of years ago after rereading it for the second time, I think, so I will have that link down below if you'd like to know more about my thoughts on the book. Obviously, being my favorite, I would recommend this. A lot of people do find that this is a slower paced book, so if you go into this expecting a lot of action, you may be disappointed, but I really love character driven books, and this is certainly one of those, and it's just so beautiful. And the final book that I have to talk about is Nevernight by J. Kristoff. This is a new favourite. So in Nevernight we follow Mia Corvier, who witnessed her father being executed as a traitor when she was younger. Fast forward 6 years later, she wants revenge, so she joins the Red Church, which is a school of assassins. With this one, I do plan on doing a full book review as well, so you can look forward to that. What I will say though is that the writing style reminded me a little bit of The Book Thief, and the School of Assassins kind of felt a little Hogwarts-esque to me, which was so exciting. I feel hesitant drawing those comparisons because I don't want you to go into this book expecting it to be like The Book Thief or to be like Harry Potter, because it's not. It's its own thing, but it does have a few elements that just felt so familiar and just felt so welcoming and I loved it. What I found really interesting about this one as well is that there are footnotes, and in my personal opinion, I think these were done really well. The footnotes were a really interesting way of fleshing out the world and the religion and the politics, and I think that the footnotes were actually spaced pretty well throughout the book as well. When we get to the really action-packed scenes where a lot of stuff is happening, there aren't any footnotes to draw you out of the story and to break up the pacing. So if that is something that you're wary of, you don't really need to worry about that. The footnotes do happen in the sections of the book where the pace is a bit slower and it is going into the world. I also think Mia is a freaking kick-ass character. What? I did buy a soap. I bought myself a Mia soap from Behind the Pages. I'll link their Etsy shop down below, but this scent is definitely Mia. It has cloves, tobacco, and strawberries, and it smells divine, absolutely divine. Oh, it's so lovely, and I don't want to use it all because then I won't have the soap anymore, but I just kind of want to lather my body in this because I want to channel the Mia. But she was just an incredible main character. I really liked getting to know a lot of these side characters as well. You don't love all of them, I'll give you that. Like, they're assassins. These are not always very nice people, but it's a really fascinating and interesting cast of characters. I'm pushing this book. I'm pushing it on you because it was so good! And I've also pre-ordered myself a hard copy of this one, the one with like the red edges. I think I might buy myself a US hardcover of this one as well because that cover's really cool too. I don't know. I think I might be going a little bit overboard, but at the same time, like, if it's a favorite book of mine and I want to support the author, I'm gonna buy more of the books in different editions. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of July. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I also did a book review, and that was on World War Z. So in the Biannual Bibliothon, one of the video challenges was to do a creative book review, and I decided to do an acrostic review. So I got my whiteboard out and I did a bit of an acrostic poem, but like a review. So I have the title, World War Z, and with each of those letters in the title, I have a different point to talk about the book and ultimately review it. So that was a really fun review to do because it was just so different from what I've ever done before. And a lot of you guys seem to really enjoy it as well. So I'm contemplating doing some more of those in the future just because it was kind of different. I've been filming this video for at least an hour. I'm finally done. I'm hungry now, so I'm gonna go and get myself some food. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my really long, rambly video. Don't forget to check out the links down below to the reviews that I've mentioned. Hopefully I will get around to doing full reviews of House of Leaves and Nevernight relatively soon. I'll have to see, because I started back at uni this week, so my life is over. All my, like, social life and reading life. I'm not gonna have any free time. Anyway, that's all that I have for now. I will see you very soon with my August to be read pile, and until then, bye! My thoughts are all over the place. I'm so sorry, future Katrina. Editing this is gonna be a bitch. I already know we're at like 20 minutes. I'm talking about the third book.